Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Creative Time, and thank you, Dannenberg Foundation. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. There has been like I didn't know I was told many things, and I think it has been some days of really good care and so many attention from the team. I'm really, really grateful for you all. It's certainly, I mean, a very brave stand that Creative Time is taking, opening this space to explore the potential impact of contemporary art in the social change. And I think it's something that I was questioning myself. So this prize is for sure a recognition, but it also involves, for me, a responsibility and exposure, for sure. It arrives in a moment for me, of kind of examining and reflection on what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And it's not casual that it comes in synchronicity with this year's Documenta 13. I still remember Chus Martinez's words saying, "This Documenta is the end of pop." Not so sure if still we can say so. But it's still important to remember Caroline Christoph Bagagiev's description of the possible states for the artist nowadays. To be in sleep, to be on a stage, to be in a state of hope, and to be under siege. And somehow, let me see if it works. Okay. Which button is it? All right.
Okay, to the right.
Okay. Well,
upside down.
okay. Ah, right, okay. Well, thinking in Bruno Munari and trying to seeking a sleep in an uncomfortable armchair, I kind of feel like that. And again, back in a stage. And I think that part of that uncomfortable feeling, it's related with the way we define ourselves and the way we are labeled. So, for example, to be defined as when I did a project involving small farmers, seed savers, and hackers, free software activists, to exchange knowledge and practices and to develop a system to exchange seeds. I remember I was defined as new media artist. As you can see, it's not certainly my best skill. And actually, you were telling me I don't need to point on the screen. It's a non-directional technology. This is very scary. No? It's even worse. It's like non-directional help. The question is then how far can one be self-identified with the notion of artist and activist, or the notion of self-engaged artist? There is for sure reasons to do things. We shouldn't forget neither. Goya told us that the dreams of reasons can produce monsters. But also it's important to question why we do things and how do we do them. So when I think in examples of social engagement in art, always came to my mind Gustave Courbet. As you remember, he was not only taking very strong commitment through his paintings, commenting on the socio-historical moment he lived, but also taking part directly in the uprisals during the Paris Commune in 1848. And being director of the Arts Assembly, he commanded the destruction of the Vendôme column. What happened 1 century later or more of avant-garde is that the engagement of the social artist is not like a side activity. It could become an artwork itself. So that the theme, the moment we are engaged can be become a theme and a genre with also the subsequent, in my opinion, problem of the aestheticization of politics. So I think we have to be very aware of the conditions in which we work, taking also the ideas from Village. We are developing the notion of social engaged art under the ideology of consumerism, ideology that we all know very well, that is seeking for novelty, instant gratification, a spectacle, the narrative of success, and the saturation of stimulus. And it's under these premises and under these conditions that we try to develop another understanding of art, what we could call socially engaged art or community arts. Under post-Fordism, as Pascal Gillen defined very well, the notion of community artist could be a contradiction in itself. If we think in the evolution in art history from canvas to career, that means to be legitimized through the fulfillment of the normative that academy imposed on the artist, to the notion of the coherent oeuvre or body of work that the artist will develop with his own style. And finally, the signature becoming the brand. We could very honestly ask ourselves, how far can a social process be authorized? You know? Because I think that the final question is that this art context, what imposes is the conflict between the individual and the common. So it's quite an inflammable situation. Here we are playing with fire. Anyway, and it has raised no few questions, no? Like the considerable distrust that can come from economic or political powers sponsored forms of art activism, as well as the established art world somehow struggling to accept that any positive form can come from this social engagement. The community workers themselves could also have troubles on accepting art as a way to create the commons. And there is no prevailing way out to leave this post-Fordist conditions in the art world. I think the question is maybe to think in these conditions themselves. So as cultural producers, I call to my fellow artists to pay attention to the situation of somehow constant flexibility, submission, sometimes self-exploitation, and a lot of time with a computer. No? The question for me then is to maybe take as main theme for the social engaged artist to mirror that context, either in a reflecting, in an accurate reflection, or in a distorting way, and to think inside the box, in this case, think inside the white box. Then if I had to define myself, I would rather say like a renegade cultural laborer. But in this time, injured somehow between being in the art front and deserting. I remember Hölderlin's word saying that the philosophy is the hospital for the poet. And go back to Friedrich Schiller. What happened to Friedrich Schiller in 1792? He was already an acclaimed, successful professor in Halle, and he already had developed a whole body of poetry and theater pieces in which he very clearly states that the mission of the art is to get to know our peers, and as well to qualify and prepare mankind to deal and to get on with freedom. And freedom not only in the negative sense of getting rid out of our chains, but also, as Hegel said, an intellection of the strictly necessary. He for sure was very advanced when he as well said that the most perfect of all artworks is the instauration of a true political freedom. So at the beginning he was very happy and welcomed the revolution in the neighboring country in France, and he even was honored as French citizen by the Assembly. But later, decepted with the flow of events there, he just stopped producing and come back to write on aesthetic and philosophy. And he came finally with a notion that freedom can only be achieved through beauty, and defining the artist as the custodian of nature, or that one who can bridge between the origin of mankind and the notion of more elevated progress. But he was not neither like just retired. He later came back with a lot of new theater pieces, what is quite interesting because theater would be seen as having, I don't know, a TV program or a talk show, not talking on the sense of a spectacle for that time. So I tried to build my own philosophy with very kind of, well, not very sophisticated concepts maybe, the pigment, piers, and parish, and try to go a little bit through them. So pigment, as you know, was a very valuable matter. In ancient painting, the amount of pigment you would use to produce an artwork was very precisely measured the lapis lazuli for the cobalt blue, and artists were taking much care of how this was established. Maybe in this moment of rethinking the potential of art to be engaged in social context, that valuable matter would be time. And the question of time for me is central. The challenge of developing a transformative and coherent intervention in the social realm, and at the same time providing inputs into the art context. So there could be a correlation, and a good artist could become a bad activist as far as is having a different flow of the capacity of attention and time. And on the other hand, maybe the good activists are not fulfilling the requirements that the artist recognition demands. So I would like just to read from Schiller. I know it's not a very impressive book, but it's very condensed in truth and philosophy. The poetic truth does not exist in that something has actually occurred, but rather in that it could occur. Therefore, in the inner possibility of the matter. The aesthetical force must therefore already lie in the conceived possibility. So the poet is just bringing us a possibility. And the poet, even if he places the most perfect moral model before our eyes, has no other end, and may have no other, than to delight us through the contemplation of the same. This is probably to be applied to the radical social change, reverting the notion of the artist activist, and then the artist activist not really doing, but just suggesting. And on the other hand, maybe we should revert as well the notion of the activist. In the early 2000s, Schellenberg and Nordhaus wrote this very interesting essay analyzing the problems that environmentalists were facing. So basically considering the environment as a thing, apart from ourselves. Second, that we need a technical remedy. And third, that we need to sell the proposals to legislators through public relations, spectacular techniques, and so on. The question, in fact, is that the entire landscape has changed, and environmentalists are in a cultural war, whether they like it or not. And it's a war over our core values. So what they play as a question is that who will craft proposals framed around vision and values if the environmentalists are working only in the technical solution? So maybe are the environments the ones who have to change as well the approach? This is the proposal I developed with Emi Franceschini, of my love. And then there was in the Brouwer Center a major hub for activists that we noticed that was being permeated by corporate culture. So we were thinking, who has this vision and values? Maybe the remnants of pastoralist culture in the California, Idaho, and this area. So we somehow invited to gather and to rethink this new approach, maybe under the vision and the values of, in this case, Shepherd Wagon. The question is that we might need to tap into the creative worlds of myth-making and even religion, and not to that settle, just to sell this relation. So back to Europe, in 2007 I started to work with pastoralist movements, and in 2010 it was the idea to create a European Shepherds Network to bring together different organizations of shepherds and exchange amongst themselves. And the idea of having a very clear action that was going to give visibility and power to the shepherds in front of strict legislation coming from the European Union. For example, imposing electronic identification of sheep. That means that you have to tag with a chip every sheep to be controlled. Is any better example of biopower in action? Anyway, the action was to walk through from Berlin to Brussels with flocks, and it was a long journey, and to stop in every village and every places and host actions. Here we can see all the symbols that shepherds were representing, and the costume itself as a symbol of power, the stick that was handled from hand to hand. The idea then for Documenta that I thought that could be important would be to maybe stage a fictional moment in which shepherds meet in the future and think back in that action that triggered a massive social change and somehow brought a new conscience in Europe to a transition to a sustainable model based in the vision of the shepherd. That shortcut through history was later, when the date was approaching, being very difficult to realize, because I realized that the art context itself is not a neutral recipient. It conforms a proposal. And in this case, art world is very much in crave of the exotic, in crave of the need to get closer to other realities, but at the same time keeping very much the distance of what is a true agent, an artist with a proper curriculum, and what is another cultural actor that could be a shepherd. So I propose is to have a ritual inside and get maybe the source, the representatives of that potential cultural legitimation process, the curators and artists, to nominate the shepherds as an artist collective itself and become an avant-garde that would guide the evolution of history. That didn't happen. We still need more time to meet both worlds. What I did is a small communication guerrilla action that was to credit properly who is the shepherd, who is, for example, being part of the imaginary discourses that we use very often. So, sorry, I need to go fast, and you don't want a Spanish person to speak fast. So I try to keep it slow. So here we are, somehow cluelessness, as Charles Sesche says, so completely apparent disorientation. And then it comes the pear. I was like 2 weeks ago in my farm, and I was having a pear from the tree, and I realized such a marvelous and beautiful gift, and how fabulous is the self-contained and humble beauty of the pear itself. Is not so evident as the biblical apple. But anyway, I was thinking, when was the last time that a poet wrote to the pear, and the need to actually create the silence, to have the spaces of void. I was thinking Roland Barthes when he was questioning himself how to subtract myself from the social obligations. Barthes be the Recipient, I would rather don't do it. Or Soseki when he explains the furuyu, a Japanese concept that is the state of serenity necessary to create a world of art. I remember as well Glenn Gould when he wrote, the ultimate goal of art and creativity was the gradual lifelong construction of a state of wonder and serenity. So the need to recover that realm in childhood where we were in the world, but at the same time we were in our world, and that we had another report with things. And that's very much links as well, childhood with that animist conception. Remember Guattari 2 years before his death when he said that a temporary but necessary return to animism would deconstruct the ontological dualism that modernity brought. That dualism between soul and matter, thing and symbol, and the individual and the collective. So that comes the parish. A moment of social unrest, and very uneasy moment coming from Spain is, I don't need to say anything more than Leo, that he very well explained, but I think it's a very interesting moment of a kind of perverse effect of this financial turmoil in which the people somehow interiorize the guilt of the debt, and sometimes you have two options, either to react paralyzed with the fear that if you move, actually the markets will punish you more, and then you have to hold your breath, or to actually react with anger and action and revolt. But nevertheless, we have to question ourselves against what we revolt. Are we asking for a new empowered welfare state? Are we asking to go back to rates of growth that will leave our Western societies keep in the standards of living that we had? And what will we place instead? If today there were elections in Greece, third part of the votes will be to the Golden Dawn Party, that is, as you know, a new version of the National Socialist Party. So I try to bring back my lessons from these years of activism. One of them, if I remember, was in the year 2000, when we were having the aftermath after Seattle, and we circulated a lot this article from written in London, Give Up Activism, very well explaining that the notion of the activist as a professional who knows the truth and separate himself from society was also not going to help anymore. I remember as well 2 weeks ago going to the International Goat Summit. As you know, there are many summits around, interesting topics. You could know about the characterization of hair follicle in embryonic Inner Mongolian Kashmir goat, and it was quite interesting experience. In the Canary Islands, there were a lot of bananas and around the carpet, and it was for me a very good opportunity. For example, listen one of the scientists saying what we need is to use goats in our pro-poor strategies and to improve productivity. And then one Indian researcher stand up and said, well, I think you're missing the point, because in fact, farmers, the so-called poor farmers who keep goats, very often don't have them to have milk or meat, but as a kind of insurance in case of emergency to be able to sell and get cash to recover from an impact or a turbulence. So we should need to start to be able to ask the right questions. Other experiences I remember is from years, I don't know, 2000 as well, something, spending 1 year in Ecuador when the indigenous movement won the elections. It was a moment of hope. The indigenous movement could be in power, in coalition. And very soon, in some months, I could see how the social movement, very strong, of the CONAIE was completely destructured because of being too accomplished with the very narrow frame of a state organization. So the other experience I would like to share with you was in 1998 or something like that. I went to a small village in Aragon, near Catalonia, to give a talk on genetic modified organisms. And at the end of the talk, a very old man approached me, and he happened to be CNT, do you know the Anarchist Union? CNT leader for the village. And I asked him, so how did you manage to do all that in 1936? How did you manage to get the village self-organized and with that common sense of collectivization and so on? And he said, well, you know, it was not that moment, it was the years before. We were doing a very invisible and silent work in the village, just talking to the people, and we were just going to the next village if someone's daughter was ill to get a doctor. We were getting some money to pay someone's education. And when the time happened to be a rise of the fascist army, people just trust us and follow, and the collectivization started. So the point is to try to be aware that there is no single easy formula. You might know this movements, I think it's quite interesting. It's like a very decadent version of the Mithraism, no? And at the end of the Roman Empire. And it's very effective because the people know how they have to use the media. And the question is that there is no single formula. We could be looking for a savior, but there is no way. So I opened space in 2010, a platform for farmers movement, Via Campesina, the government, Ministry of Agriculture in Spain, art institutions like Reina Sofia, and artists to talk about the situation of city countryside and to open a space of reflection. Well, a logo is necessary. In this case, it's a sheet. It's a stylized cow sheet, but sheet is very important, and Indians know it. So the project has been going, and you can check the website, and it's focused on rural Spain. It's 80% of the territory. The idea has been to reflect and also to send artists to villages. So 22 artists have been sent to village to work within a specific context. I have no time, I have just 10 seconds to go through all the projects, but the situation is that, well, from mixing traditional music with new technologies and to help new bureaucracies. This is a small museum, and this is the artwork by the shepherds, very strong artwork. Well, thanks a lot. I hope to see I'll see you in the next stage of the project. It's a European network to work on the new 3 grounds for a total art renovation. And we'll be starting it's a nice postcard to end. We'll be starting this crafts school in Mallorca, so everybody is welcome to support, and we trade with complementary basketry and pottery workshops. Thanks a lot.